if people don't have that support, usually it is available. Usually it's available to you. And it doesn't have to be just one thing. Like, it doesn't just have to be your family. There might be someone else that's always been around, and like a friend or a neighbor or someone that's always been around offering to help, but because you haven't been open to it and available to those people to come into your life, you think that there's no one there. But usually when you think that you don't have that support, if you just stop and open yourself up, they're usually within arm's length of you.
Hey, what's up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to a Mastery. Today we are with Mr. Nick Prefontaine. What's going on, Nick?
Hey, Dave, I'm thrilled to be here. I was looking forward to this conversation since we connected down at our event, the QLS Live, a few weeks ago. That was 3 weeks ago now. I can't believe it.
It's been 3 weeks, no doubt. Well, listen, it was awesome to hear you on stage. As soon as I heard you on stage, I said I wanted to get you on the podcast and share this message with so many others. A great message of perseverance and what's possible. So I appreciate you being here today, man. Just a quick bio, and then I want to have you kind of share your story. We're also streaming, by the way. We're on Clubhouse. We're on LinkedIn, and we're on Facebook as well. And if you're listening to this now on Apple Podcasts, then awesome. You'll be able to watch it on YouTube. So Nick is a speaker, founder, and CEO of Common Goal, a company that inspires and leads motivated people to their common goal. The mission is to provide people with the support and tools to achieve limitless potential. Nick was featured on FOX40 and Yahoo Finance as one of the top motivational speakers to follow in 2022. He's also been featured in Authority Magazine, Brainz Magazine, and SWAAY Media. So, Nick, man, good stuff. I'm honored to have you on the podcast again. And again, thanks for being here.
I'm excited. I'm excited to join you and the listeners and the audience out there. So I'm looking forward to it.
Before we get it right into your story, and Shantae, thanks for joining in Clubhouse, and she's gonna help me moderate the Clubhouse room that's open right now.
Awesome.
You did. It's interesting because in your bio that I read, it says he inspires and leads motivated people to their common goal. Why did you put the word motivated in there, not just people to your common goal?
Interesting question. I've always been of the frame of mind that I want to help people that want to help themselves. That's what I mean by motivated. So people who are going through whatever it is they're going through, I don't want to work with the people that are just saying, woe is me and everything is bad and I'm never going to be able to get out of this. I want to work with the people that are motivated to move beyond and move through their life challenge, trauma, or crisis, get through to the other side. And then once they're through, that's where their limitless potential lies.
I love it. Well, half the reason I asked you, because I was having a conversation earlier with somebody. We're about to hire an agency, and we were talking about my clients, and I was like, listen, I don't want every real estate agent as a client. I want the real estate agents that, are motivated, that have a mindset, and also have money, right? Like they have. So we're all
not just there for the milk and cookies.
Yeah, exactly. That's who the clients are. But anyway, that's enough about me. So listen, the reason you're here though is you. Well, why don't you tell the story? I mean, tell the story of your snowboarding accident, and then we'll talk about where we are today.
Sure. Yeah. Whenever anyone asks me to tell my origin story, like how'd you get here today? I can start back to that fateful day in 2003, February 5th, 2003. I was at ski club with all my friends. On the very first run, we got there and the rest of the class went into the room, into the lodge to get ready, but we were prepared. We were ready. We got ready on the bus. So we headed right for the top. the first ones to do it out of our class. And then going up, we noticed that it was very icy because it had been raining. People were wiping out everywhere. However, it wasn't Dave, like, it was our first go around. Um, we knew what we were doing. Um, we weren't we weren't beginners that just took a class learning how to snowboard. So
Yeah.
I was actually an instructor at the time as well. So I got to the top, buckled into my snowboard, and charged right towards the biggest jump with all my speed. And I saw it as we were going all over the train park on the chairlift. I saw it, and I was like, There wasn't even a question in my mind. I was like, I'm doing that. I'm hitting that biggest jump. So I buckled in, headed straight for it, and then when I was going up to it, I caught the edge of my snowboard on the snow, and that was the last thing that I remember. Um, I later learned that I was forced to go off that jump because of the speed that I was traversing going towards it, and because of that, through the air, I went like this and landed right on my head.
Mm.
I was told that, and this is all through um
Well, so for
third
people
party.
listening, because you,
Yeah.
you just made a motion with your hand, but we are on a podcast for a lot of people listening audio only. So you essentially you went head first off the jump, right? And you flipped over. Is that what happened and
Yeah, I
landed on your head?
rotated. Exactly. Yeah. So I rotated. I'm like trying to conceptualize this for the listeners, trying to paint the
Mm.
picture. So when I went off, there wasn't any I wasn't able to go off it straight like a
Sure.
traditional jump. You go off a jump. So in the air, I lost my balance right before I went off. In the air, I rotated, and then I landed right on my head. I was later told that these things, and I pieced together the what happened and everything based on what I was told from family, friends, people that were there and saw it firsthand. So I went off. What landed on my head, wasn't wearing a helmet. I was told that when I went off, and even though I wasn't wearing a helmet, I wore some pretty big goggles, some pretty thick goggles at the time. I never would have realized that I would need them to brace my fall. So I learned that after the initial impact, my goggles kept mysteriously rotating around my head to brace and cushion each fall as I continued to roll down the mountain. That was one of the things that I learned that mysteriously happened.
Wow.
Mysteriously or not, depending on what you believe. I'm sure a lot of people out there believe in a higher power, and that's exactly what I'm thinking. By saying mysteriously. Also,
Yeah.
another thing that happened, there was only one paramedic out of all the paramedics in the area who could intubate right on the spot, and I needed that to be able to breathe because of the severity of my injuries. And he was one of the paramedics that showed up to the mountain that day.
So what's intubate? What is that?
It's a medical process that they basically have to paralyze you, from what I understand, and you need that to be able to breathe when you've had a severe injury. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
I don't pretend to know any bit about that, but that's what I understand.
Okay. All
That
right. So I mean, so you're on the mountain. You just got wrecked in this accident, and then what ends up happening now? You're in.
So I had to get rushed to the hospital. They couldn't bring in the helicopter. They wanted to because of the severity of my injury, but I had to get rushed to the hospital. And then, so those are two things that happened: the goggles, and then the right person showing up at the mountain. And a lot of people can relate to this, that things happen, blessings or anything happen in threes. So I got to the hospital, and while I was in my room, my hospital room, I was in the coma. I was out. So the doctors would come into my room to share progress updates with my parents on how I was doing. And at least early on, it wasn't like these updates were very positive. They had to give them the worst case scenario. So each time they walked into the room to give them the worse and worse news, more negative and more negative, my parents stopped them each time and said, whoa, whoa, not in front of him. So they made the doctor go outside the room to share the updates, what was happening with me. And like I said, it wasn't very positive.
So
Early on.
you kind of jumped forward, Nick. So I mean, you had the accident, which put you in a coma, right?
Yep.
And then you ended up fine. When did I mean you had a brain injury, correct? That's ultimately what ended up
Yeah,
happening.
exactly. So I later learned that I was in a coma. They said from the impact alone, I would have been out for approximately 7 to 10 days just from the impact alone. However, they were afraid that the swelling would go up, would increase, and it was already at a point where if it increased anymore, there was the potential that I would die. So they had to induce me. It was a partially induced coma that I was in for 3 weeks. I really don't remember a month because, as I said, it was partially induced. So I had to come off that medication and those drugs and everything like that. After a month, I was transported to a rehab hospital in Boston. And that's where I began my journey of having to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again. And then initially, I resided on the third floor, which was reserved for the most critical of cases. I, Dave, I hardly have any memory of being on the third floor because, again, they were in the process of taking me off of all the drugs and medication from a partially induced coma. I still had a pretty long road to go. Um, the most that I could do was sit up in bed, supported by 3 nurses for only 8 minutes at a time. And even after that, I was sweating like I had just ran 6 miles. As you can, I was just thoroughly exhausted.
Yeah.
After, and they were long days for me too. It wasn't like I was just in the hospital until I got better. I got up and I needed help getting ready in the morning because I had to learn how to do everything all over again. When people think that, oh, he had to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again, that wasn't the extent of it. I had to do everything. It was almost like I was a newborn in a 14-year-old body. I had to learn how to do everything. So I had to learn how to shower, how to take care of myself. So I would get up in the morning, be wheeled in a wheelchair in the early stages, the first several weeks, to the shower, and then I would need my occupational therapist to help me learn how to shower and take care of myself again. For anyone out there that's thinking about what they're going through, this is truly a humbling experience.
Yeah.
So you let your guard down. You have to just realize that, and I had to take their instruction and learn how to do everything all over again. Then after that, I would start my first sessions of therapy, which was physical, occupational, and speech. And after which we broke for lunch. Now, it was at one of these lunches that a moment of doubt crept in. At the time, I was in a wheelchair and I was just looking over my situation and I just couldn't figure it out. I was confused. For some reason, I was like, well, why am I in this? Well, what's going on? And I looked over at my mom. This is like a defining moment for me. I looked over at my mom and I said, am I ever going to be able to walk again? And she didn't even hesitate. She said, of course you are. That's what we're doing here. So you can get everything back and we can go home. This allowed me to have that confidence in that moment of doubt. And for the rest of the time, I'd continue to take my next steps every day. And then after lunch, I would start my uh, afternoon sessions of my therapy. So
Mm.
physical, occupational, and speech therapy. And I had double sessions of therapy 5 days a week.
So Nick, you went through this whole process for how long was the total? You were in the hospital for how long? It was months, correct?
Yeah, in total, it was a little less than 90 days.
Okay, got
So
it.
I
Okay.
got I got in my accident on February 5th, and I ran out of Franciscan Children's Hospital, the rehab hospital in Boston. I ran out
So
on believe the date was April 24th.
that's
So it was
amazing.
a little less than 3 months. I really don't remember a month of that because I was in the coma. Like, that period of my life is gone. I'm never going to get that
Well,
back.
walk us through because one of the things you shared with us at the event was your metaphor, which was step, and the
Yep.
process you used to. So walk us through the step process here. So for our listeners, because that was what really stood out to me.
Yeah, this is a great point to insert this or interject this. So unknowingly, they're recovering from my snowboarding accident, and then throughout my whole life, Dave, you saw my my talk, so you saw that we don't have enough time here to go into every bit of detail, but um, I've used this. So I unknowingly used a system when I was recovering from my snowboarding accident, and that system is STEP. And STEP is an acronym. So the first letter, S, is for support. You have to make sure that you have your support lined up right at the start. And really, this will have you falling back on relationships that you built prior to your setback. Once you have knowing that who is going to be in your corner frees up so much of your mental energy to focus on accomplishing your objective. Because if you don't do that at the start, and really it's at the start of everything. So if you don't do that at the start, you're going to waste so much of your energy. Like, are they really helping me, or is there some ulterior motive that they're looking to do? So once you get that right from the start, that really helps you move forward and move on to the next letter, T, which is trust.
Well,
So,
let's with the S, your
yep,
family, you had your family there, right, for support because your mother encouraged you and told you you'd be fine again. You'd walk, right? Is that what you're referring to?
absolutely.
Right.
And that's the example. That's the example that I like to give, like within my story, is that um that moment of doubt crept in, and I had that support. I had that support with me all the time. So I always had someone with me. My mom would be with me during the day, and then my dad would come in and spend nights with me.
Mm,
And then while I was in the hospital, I saw that there were so many kids that didn't have the support that I had, which meant they didn't have an advocate with them at all times. So their minds could easily fall into being a victim of circumstance.
mm.
Without a consistent diet, a positive reinforcement in our lives, we can easily fall into playing the victim. It's human nature. So
Wow.
because I had someone with me at all time, that allowed me to continue to move forward. Now, next, once I took my first step, I was able to trust, because I had that support, Dave. I was able to trust that the next step was always going to be available to me once I took my first step. And no matter how small, by continuing to move forward every day, I was building an unstoppable momentum.
Mm,
And then of the step system, E stands for energy. Maintaining your energy allows your body its natural ability to be able to heal itself. We are all born with an innate knowing inside of us that keeps us healthy. Medication has the potential to get in the way of that. There are a few ways I like to illustrate this. Because I was in that partially induced coma, as soon as I came out of the coma, my parents wanted to get me off of the medication as soon as possible. They knew of the body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. This is impossible if you are constantly on medication.
Mm.
So unless it wasn't absolutely critical to my survival, they opted to not have me on any medicine. And then so after that, after I got out of the hospital, I'll share this a little bit. After I got out of the hospital, I my work wasn't done, so I had to continue to go to therapy, outpatient therapy, for another 6 months, along with being tutored all summer long, 5 days a week, in order to continue on to high school with the rest of my classmates. This is really interesting because focusing on your energy is something that I have done throughout my entire life. After coming out of the coma and all of that medication, as I said, that was into my system, and after finishing outpatient therapy and everything, I started seeing a naturopathic doctor in 2005 to really
Mm.
cleanse myself of all the medication and all the drugs. And I kept taking my next step. I kept going, and I finally got to a point in, I believe it was 2010, where the doctor, I met with him for a review, and he said to me, Nick, I can't really, we can't really do much for you anymore. Like your levels are all good. You've basically got all the toxins out of your system.
So,
So
so Nick, so listen, I believe it or not, I have a delivery. I have a truck. I got to run down. So I'm going to have you keep sharing your story, and I will be back in like 6 minutes. All right. So if you see me disappear, that's why. My wife's not, no one's home, and there's somebody at my front door that
no, hey,
okay. All
it's
right.
real. It's
This is
real.
real.
You
So I
you're
will be
doing
right
that.
back.
It's real life. I got it. No, I got it 100%. So after I ran out of the hospital, I had to, as I said, continue to get outpatient therapy for another 6 months. Now, I had a little aside to tell you about how I've always been working on my energy. However, another important thing happened during that period that I definitely want to share with everyone, and that after finishing out therapy, it's kind of a little surreal to me, but only 18 months later, I was knocking on the doors of some distressed sellers that hadn't paid their mortgage in months, sometimes years. And my job was to go there, knock on the door, and then set up an appointment with one of our investors to meet with them, to talk about potentially buying their house. Looking back on this, I can see that it was a big part of my recovery, going door to door, helping people out of their unfortunate situation. It's an interesting thing about this time period during my life because, as I said, I was only 16. I was in high school. I came to my dad and I originally said I saw what they were doing, and that they were starting to play with the idea of having people go around and knock on the doors of homeowners that have received the NOD letter, the notice of default letter from the bank. When I No one taught me how to do this, but it made sense to me that, oh, okay, you go to the areas where you can do the most amount of doors in a day. And that's what I would do. So I was going into not s- some rougher areas. Um, and those areas, there was notice of default letters had been delivered to. Basically, I would knock on the door and then go right next door. At first, I really wasn't having a lot of success doing that. But then, my cousin and I flew out to California, where we shadowed the number one person in the country that was having success doing these doors. And once I saw him and how his approach differed from mine, I immediately changed it and started having success once I got back to the East Coast. I really, the final letter and the most important letter of the STEP system is P, and that's for persistence. So persistence, once you've taken your first step, keep getting up every day and taking your next step, no matter how small. By continuing to move forward every day, you are building an unstoppable momentum. Persistence is also a mindset. If you just keep getting up and taking that next step, no matter how small, you're building that momentum that's going to keep you going and keep sustaining you.
Mm.
So that's certainly a 10,000 foot view of the STEP system. However, Dave, if it's okay with you, I'd like to share with your listeners how they can get a free copy of the ebook STEP,
Yeah.
where they can learn all about support, trust, energy, and persistence. And that's by heading to our website, which I'm sure Dave is going to. We talked
Yeah.
earlier before
We'll
the
put it in
show.
the notes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's nickprefontaine.com/step, STEP. And there, as I said, they're going to learn all about support, trust, energy, and persistence and be able to take their first step today.
So I'm gonna open it up for questions because we do have some people live with us on Clubhouse. So anybody on Clubhouse, if you have a question, just give me a mic flash, and I'm happy to. Oh, it looks like Shantae actually has a question for you, and I have one as well. So, Shantae, you there?
I am.
Hi,
All right.
Shantae. How are you?
Hi, I am feeling very inspired by your story. I think that your story is just very touching, and I love it when people share their stories because it shows where they came from, it shows their strength, and like you said, your persistence and the mindset is so, so important in all of this process. I have to ask you though, you mentioned that, you know, your mom or your dad, they would take shifts and stuff like that with you when you were in the hospital, and you really believe that that's what helped maintain your positive mindset. Was there any point in time, you know, during that process, during any of this, that you just really felt like giving up, like you know, you just felt like you couldn't take another day of it, a point where, you know, it was just too much for you? And if so, what was the shift in your mind that said not to give up, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it definitely does make sense. I would say that the one time that I had a doubt was what I shared with you when I was still in the wheelchair early on in my recovery, in between my double sessions of therapy at lunch, and I when I turned to my mom, that was the only bit I think of doubt, Shantae, that I can remember. Um, but part of the reason why I didn't have that doubt was because I always had someone with me. So while I was in the hospital, there was just I saw all the other kids, and this is no fault to anyone, but I saw them in their situations, and because they weren't always with someone, whether it's a spouse. Well, no, actually, it was a children's hospital, so there probably wasn't a lot of spouses. But because they didn't have their family with them at all times, they could sit and ruminate and think about, and this happens to all of us. If we sit and we don't have a consistent diet of positive reinforcement in our lives, we can easily fall back into playing the victim. It's negative. If we don't constantly feed ourselves with positive thoughts and like read books, like I read positive books and like success books every morning, along with journaling and writing, and reflecting and everything like that. If we don't do that, our minds will easily fall into playing the victim. And I saw it firsthand. People that didn't have someone with them at all times, that's where they fell.
Mm.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Yeah.
So if people don't have that support system, then you would highly recommend surrounding yourself with things that are supportive to the mind, like reading books, maybe listening to motivational speakers like yourself, things like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you said that, because this is something that I've thought about a lot, is that if people don't have that support, usually it is available. Usually it's available to you, and it doesn't have to be just one thing. Like, it doesn't just have to be your family. There might be someone else that's always been around, and like a friend or a neighbor or someone that's always been around offering to help, but because you haven't been open to it and available to those people to come into your life,
Mm.
you think that there's no one there. But usually when you think that you don't have that support, if you just stop and open yourself up, they're usually within arm's length of you. They're usually close to you. So you just have to be open to receiving it from any source. No, it doesn't just have to be family.
Yeah. Great
Perfect. I
question.
just wanted to let everybody know that even if you don't feel like I don't have family that is supportive, but I do have very close friends that are supportive. So I wanted everybody to
Exactly.
understand that it doesn't have to be family. It can be supportive out there. Even if they think there's somebody there, there is someone there.
Yeah.
1,000%. Yes, 1,000%.
And awesome. And also, I mean, listen, we have a community. So we have a community that meets every morning. And I was just listening to you. It just occurred to me that a lot of people, I work with real estate agents. A lot of those real estate agents don't have that type of I don't know if support. I guess it is support in being in a conversation about like what we're talking about right like now, like not like, oh my gosh, everything's falling apart, interest rates, inflation, but no, it's a conversation around, let's go out there, let's take action, let's talk to more people, let's help people, let's serve people, let's every day have conversations, you know what I mean? And I think that is also part of it, Nick. And it just kind of occurred to me that the community I have, it does support real estate agents.
Absolutely. The community, whatever it is very similar to a family. A community, you support one another once you're in a community, in a group like that. That's the next best thing. If not on the same level, that's great.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Any other questions from the Clubhouse crew? Anybody else want to ask Nick a question before? If you do, just give me a mic flash. Okay.
I did have one more question. When you gave your analogies for the word step, was the E energy?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks.
I
Thanks,
love
Shantae.
that. So
Yeah, it's good. So one more time. So the S is support,
Mm-hmm.
trust.
Support, trust, energy, and persistence. And then what I shared with everyone today is really like a 10,000-foot view, like a high level overview.
Mm.
In the step ebook, which is a gift for anyone listening to this, once they download that, there's actually all of those letters broken down.
Oh,
So I
wow.
touched on it a little bit, like when I said your advocate, you got to make sure you have your advocate lined up. When I was talking about, I always had someone with me. That's just one of the subsets of support. So within the step ebook, I go into detail on each of those: support, trust, energy, and persistence.
And so before we wrap, you can let everybody know again how to get your ebook. I do want to ask you about another word you mentioned a couple times. So you mentioned the word victim, and I think you mentioned not being a victim.
Mm-hmm.
So tell how did that, talk to us more about that? Like why did you even mention that word victim, and what's important about that?
Because I think if we're not careful, Dave, um, and this is something I already touched on, but I'll come at it from a different way. I'll explain it from a different way. If we're not careful, by feeding ourselves with constant positivity and like surrounding ourselves with a group like you have done, like you were talking about your agents, if we're not careful, by being passive, our minds can easily fall into playing the victim. And that's the same as being negative. So when I said negative, our minds, if we're not like proactively seeking it out, seeking that positivity out, our minds can easily fall into playing the victim. And that's human nature. None of us can like even me, I can't overcome that. That's I always have positivity around me. So to give you an idea, which is not something I've touched on, but to give you an idea, my parents put affirmations all over my walls in my hospital room. Picture the only time that I wasn't either in therapy or meeting with my doctors, I was in my room. And it wasn't like I could get up and walk out of the room. So on each wall of my hospital room was affirmations that again positivity constantly surrounding me. So one of them was, with each step I take, I'm getting closer and closer to my goal. I would look at it on the other wall, and another success quote would be there as well.
Mm.
That said, every day, like for example, every day I get up, um, I am continually moving towards my goal. The positivity was constantly surrounding me. And that's one of the things that I recommend for everyone, because if you don't, you can easily fall into playing the victim. That's what I meant by that. Does that
Yeah,
make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah, 100%. So
Yeah.
your family and you guys are really in the real estate space. Your father's been in the real estate space a long time. Believe it or not, he's one of the first people I met when I got my license,
Yeah.
ironically, at an investment property. But how does like, and you guys deal with like lease purchase options and different types of things. You guys have a community, a bigger community than I have. But what is your what's your like? How does somebody take what they just heard from you, the step process, and use that right now as we're going into some, say, uncertain times in real estate?
When it comes to, are you, I just to clarify before I answer, are you talking about like agents, or like
Yeah.
are you just talking about real
Yeah,
estate
we'll say, yeah,
professionals in general?
the majority of my listeners are real estate agents. So
Yeah.
there's also, I know we have a lot of investors and stuff too, but the reality is like the steps, like this metaphor, this analogy is it's about mindset, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So um, big picture, and the whole thing about what it is that we teach at Common Goal is that once you take your first step, there will always be a next step available to you. And even if it's minuscule, even if it's so tiny, just take your first step
mm,
wherever it is that you want to go. And we can leave everyone with this, where whatever it is that you want to accomplish, what's the first step that you can do to change that, to affect that? What's the first step? The most important thing is that you go and take your first step, no matter how small it is, because once you take your first step, you got to trust that the next step will always be available to you. And you got to follow it. So if you have a desire or a calling inside of you, um, that's something else that you have to trust. So as long as you're lining up your support, you're trusting that the next step will always be available to you. You have to make sure that you're taking care of your energy. So if you're running yourself down over and over and over again, doing something, running your head against a wall, then you're not going to be able to utilize the step system. So as long as you're keeping all of these on level, then that's going to lead to the next letter, P, persistence. Once you've taken your first step, keep getting up every day and taking your next step, no matter how small. By continuing to move forward every day, and this is as I'll just say a real estate professional, either an agent or an investor, by continuing to do something every day, whether it's picking up the phone and doing lead generation, prospecting, or anything like that, just do 3 calls. Do 3 calls, and then just have that in your mind that, okay, I'm going to do 3 calls every day this week. And then the next day, do 3 calls. And then pretty soon you'll be like, oh, 3's not so bad. I can do 5. And then you'll say, after a week, 5's not so bad. I can do 10. But if you're setting yourself up at the beginning by saying only 3, that's not such a big deal in your head. And then you're only going to grow from there. If you set the goal at 20 or 30 right at the beginning, that's overwhelming. You're not going to be able to maintain that. So if you just say 3 and then you end up doing 20 or 30, if there's a day when you don't feel like it, at least you're going to do those 3, and that's going to help you maintain your momentum.
I love it, dude. I was listening, ironically, with the phone calls, I was listening to Jared a few days ago, and he's one of Cardone's top, and he was top guys, and he was saying similar to what you said, is just take the first step. And he goes, for the phone, he goes, if you need to, just call someone and hang up on yourself. You just took the first step, like you called and hung up on yourself. Then the next step, call back and say, hi, this is, and hang up on yourself again. Now,
yeah. And then piece it together.
Like, yeah.
I
And
love
then
it.
all of a sudden, yeah, isn't that wild? So it's so true. Like, just have fun with this stuff. And sometimes we just got to not take ourselves so serious, but awesome, brother. Well, it's been fun having you, man. I appreciate you. I love your story. Any final thoughts you want to give to our listeners, and then let us know how to get in touch with your book, or get a copy, get in touch with your book, get a copy of your book.
Well, that's right. They can get in touch with my book too.
Yeah.
They can
Good
get in
point,
touch
yeah.
with they can get in touch with my book, and they can also find me at nickprefontaine.com/step. And as I said, they'll be able to learn all about support, trust, energy, and persistence. I'm so excited. I'm just like mashing all my words together.
That's good.
And they'll be able to take their first step today.
Awesome. And then a final thoughts you want to leave our people with, like anything, like here's my Nick Prefontaine thought. Take this with you.
Sure. Whatever it is that you're going through, whether it be a life challenge, crisis, or trauma, just know that once you take your first step, the next step will always be available to you, as long as you trust it, as long as you follow it.
Amen. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate you. That was awesome. Thank you so much for this today.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Dave.